And when Dr. Cooper said he's used insects, he's used donkeys, I'll never forget, I said to my friend, mentor, and colleague, Dr. Handysides, one day, we were walking to the front of the auditorium at the General Conference session in St. Louis. And he was going to give the devotional, and I sensed that he was a little tense. And we were going together because I was going to manage the slides for him. And I said, but I sense that you're a little nervous. He said, well, wouldn't you be? He said, there are 35,000 people going to be looking at this. I said, don't worry. I said, the Lord has spoken through donkeys before. Meaning Balaam, he'll do it again. We had a very good relationship, and I thought that he would keep that to himself, and it was the first thing he said when he got up to preach. But God scripts programs better than organizers can do. Because he peered over the shoulder of Dr. Cooper and Brother Tayo, Elder Tayo, and Sister Sikwa when he planned this morning's program. Because if we listened and listen carefully, my prayer is we will hear his voice. Father, as human instruments, we string together quotations and thoughts which we think may be appropriate. But my prayer is this morning that your Spirit will be like those unseen fingers turning the pages in our minds and conscience and thoughts to speak a message to my heart and that of my brothers and sisters. May the words of our mouths, the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. He was a man I had known for many years. He had been a leader when I was a little boy in then JMVs. Do any of you know what JMVs is? You do? Well, I'm not the oldest one here then. But he had grown old. He'd had surgery. He'd had bypass surgery. He'd had a previous stroke. And he came into my office, a man who had invested me with my busy bee when I was a little boy. He was now sitting on the other side of my desk seeking a cardiology follow-up opinion. We had seen each other often. He was staying at a Seventh-day Adventist retirement village. And it's interesting what God's Spirit does to the most fiery of us, because I'd seen him be a fiery individual, fiery in his response. He would have made Paul look like St. Francis of Assisi sometimes. As he sat on the other side of the desk, and I asked him, and how are you in yourself? And he said to me, as he always would say, just fine. And we went through the conversation, taking medications, diet, exercise, etc., because this was not his first visit with me. I then did the examination, and as I did the pulse, I felt this was not normal. And as I did the blood pressure, I did it first on one side, then the other side, and I was horrified because it was totally out of control, never had been before. And as the examination continued, I found him to be in mild heart failure. And as he got dressed, I said to him, something drastically has changed. Well, he said, I was hoping it would be for the better. I said, well, it's not for the better. What have you done? He said, well, we've had a special group of meetings out at the retirement home where people came to teach us all about health. And they said, throw away your tablets. Drink water, do this, do that, and that's what I've been doing. And I really expected today that you would tell me I am doing very well. What is Adventist missionary work? And we can all quote tales and stories. And we can quote the tales and the stories of people who go to well-qualified physicians who don't work with excellence. The blended ministry, Adventist medical ministry, Adventist health ministry, comprehensive health ministry, is informed by statements such as this, that gospel ministers should preach the health principles, for these have been given of God. That as we meet with people, as we exercise our calling, thank you, Elder Cooper, for reminding us of being clear thinkers in our calling, in our ministry. That as people we might be prepared in both mind and body to receive the fullness of God's blessing. The medical missionary work, and I've placed in parenthesis the health ministry, has its place and part in the closing gospel work. Do you believe that? That's why we are here. It has a role to play. A quick reminder, comprehensive health ministry is meeting people's needs in practical ways by demonstrating God's love and compassion. And I briefly wish to remind you that comprehensive health ministry term comes from a conversation, an extensive conversation, which took place of how do we define the term medical missionary. And I hope you're praying, because I have prayed about this presentation. If there's anything causing headaches in God's work today, it's the misuse of the term medical missionary. Sometimes we create animals which we then cannot tame. And taking Ministry of Healing, page 143, 144, thank you, Brother Tayo, for quoting again from those beautiful passages. That the real medical missionary work is meeting people's needs in a practical way by demonstrating God's love and compassion. I'm so grateful for the partnership of ADRA. ADRA is our logical partner, Brother Tayo. It is the go-to partner for health ministry. 780 million people don't have access to an improved water source in this world. You saw the WASH project. An estimated 2.5 billion lack access to improved sanitation. You heard of the efforts to decrease open defecation. That's more than a third of the global population we're talking about. And yet, we become divisive over minutiae of diet and other things when people are perishing. And we allow our energies to be halted, to be stalled, to be wasted, when we should be making a difference. This is meeting people's needs. Providing water to those who don't have it. And you know what? The way that health ministries can do this is in a partnership. A partnership. How many people recognize this project? Anybody here recognize this project? It's in Mozambique. It's a water project done in partnership, Adventist Health Ministries and ADRA. through the assistance of a donor, to put water in place. And this is a kiosk. Not only is it a kiosk which is solar generated so that water can be pumped, but people can come and they can charge their cell phones. They can hear and see messages on health while they come to this place. They can purchase sanitary towels. Partnerships in meeting the needs. And so the perspective we need to have is that there are many kinds of needs, many kinds of ministry. It's not all just one thing. And it most certainly is not only lifestyle, which is important, which has its place. But we are called to a ministry, to meet people's needs in a practical way, be it in lifestyle, in providing water, in weeping with those who weep, and mourning with those who mourn. As a church, we have been blessed by the revelations God has given through his servant. In 1848, one of the earliest recorded visions related to the harmfulness of tobacco, tea, and coffee. In 1863, interestingly, on a Sabbath, on a Friday evening in Otsego, Ellen White received what we refer to as the major health vision. Given on a Friday evening where we can rest from our labors and our works. And when she was asked, why were we given a health message? Her reply was not so that we could be a bunch of long-lived, skinny sinners. But it was because our work is not yet done. It was in order that we can serve. The early workers of the early church, Uriah Smith looked at them as they were going off to the sanitarium that belonged to Dr. Jackson. And he termed and labeled them the invalid party because they were sick. Ellen White refers to the fact that if James White had been more temperate in his work ethic, he might have lived longer, to serve longer. In 1865, we were given the philosophy for operating healthcare institutions. And between 1900 and 1950, the church, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, opened 2 hospitals every year. We've been given an amazing opportunity of Adventist health missionary work. Why was it given? Because our work is not yet done. So we are saved to serve. That's basically what it's saying. So we have this health given to us so that we can be of service. Of course, I would be remiss not to add that longevity and quality of life may be added benefits. I said maybe, because they are not guaranteed. I cringe when people say that if you live a healthy lifestyle, you'll never get sick. That's not true. There's a delicate interplay of genetics and environment. We have a responsibility to live responsibly. We may have longevity. We may have increased quality of life. The science tells us that we will. But our purpose in having a health message is so that we can serve. No line is to be drawn between the genuine medical missionary work and the gospel ministry. These two must blend. And this morning we heard an amazing exposition of the characterization that grace brings to everything that we do, that we are. In my mind, as I listened to Elder Cooper this morning, kept coming back Paul's words, "My grace is sufficient for you." And as I was thinking about sharing some of these things with you, I pray His grace is sufficient for all of us. What are the foundations of this health ministry that we talk about? Well, primarily we have the Bible. When we as Seventh-day Adventists talk about the role of health in our being, we have 4 pillars in our church: preaching, teaching, healing, and discipling. The biblical descriptions. And then, of course, we have been so blessed to have the revelations of the spirit of prophecy, Ellen White's writings, to show us so many things. And we do her such injustice so often by portraying the health message in such a negative way. It's not a burdensome message. It is one which has been given so that we can serve and we can bless and we can be blessed. And then, of course, there's peer-reviewed, evidence-based health science. So when we look at the foundations of the ministry related to health and healing, we have 3 acid tests, litmus tests that we can use to see whether or not. And yesterday evening I was blessed to be in a meeting with some of the union leaders. And the question was asked, well, how are we going to know who is the right ministry? The scriptures give us an easy answer: by their fruits ye shall know them. By their fruits. If we are not doing responsible, evidence-based, caring, careful health education, we need to re-examine why we are doing what we are doing, or allowing that to be done. You see, embodied in the General Conference working policy is the descriptor of what Adventist health ministry is all about. Adventist healthcare and ministries are to promote only those practices based upon the Bible or the spirit of prophecy or evidence-based methods of disease prevention, treatment, and health maintenance, after a robust discussion. And you'll notice that in that writing there's also, and taking into account the sensitivity related to herbal treatments. You'll notice it says untested herbal treatments. We need to have caution when we look at what kind of practices that are being espoused in so-called Adventist medical missionary work. Beware of aromatherapy, craniosacral therapy, homeopathy, hypnotherapy, iridology, magnets, methods of aligning forces of energy, pendulum diagnostics, untested herbal remedies, reflexology, repetitive colonic irrigation. Have you heard about this colonics? Therapeutic touch and urine therapy. Teaching in another continent far away from here. We were giving foundations of health 10 years ago. And people sitting in the front said that, and they were educated people, that when their child is sick, they give the child some of the mother's urine to drink. I heard somebody say yesterday that somebody got up in a church and said, don't give your child paracetamol, give them a lemon, cut a lemon, put it under the axilla, and that'll take care of the temperature. If you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not. These are the things we need to be careful of. Does Ellen White elaborate on the issues? Because people say, oh, health science. No, that's what, you physicians are all the same. You think that we must just do what doctors say. Well, let's see what Ellen White said. she actually made the comment repetitively. And if you go into the book Education, you will find where she repeatedly says that science and the Bible are not at odds with each other. Ellen White, if you look at her practical life, espoused immunization. She took smallpox vaccination. She allowed herself to have some radiation treatment to a skin condition. So she was not against best medical practices. And what she also further says is that a practical knowledge of the science of human life. What is the science of human life? It's physiology. Physiology is necessary in order to glorify God in our bodies. It is therefore of the highest importance that among the studies selected for childhood, physiology should occupy the 10th place. Is that what she says? The what place? The first place. How few, now listen to this, saints of God. How many are drifting about with knowledge like a ship at sea? Before that, the sentence says, how few know anything about the structure and functions of their own bodies and of nature's laws. And if we did, we wouldn't believe half the rubbish we practice. We should be competent in understanding the way the body works, because knowledge helps us defend against disinformation. Many are drifting without knowledge. And what is more, they are not interested to learn how to keep their bodies in a healthy condition and prevent disease. Don't get upset with me. I didn't write this. You can be upset with me. I would like you not to be, but this is not my words. And you know, and I know, and I've spent a career lifetime in health work and healthcare, and I've met people who don't care to know about the functioning of their bodies and how to prevent disease. And so we have guidelines. When the church name and logo are used, the beautiful logo that we love so much, and you see it at the left-hand corner, your right-hand corner of the slide, is the church logo. When that name and that logo is used, those initiatives must operate within the guidelines of the church working policy. Are we clear? So when we talk about Adventist medical missionary work, we are binding ourselves to the working policy describing Adventist medical missionary work. For those who think it might be an option, it's not. It's not a choice. When we use the name, we play the game. Are we clear? So if we are doing this in the name of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, we do it right. All health events and initiatives should be formally voted and minuted. This is a risk management requirement. So if as a church you are going to run a health fair or a health expo or a breathe-free program or a depression recovery or a celebrations creation health chip program, Win Wellness, you need to have it voted by your local church. If it's going to be a conference initiative, it needs to be voted by the conference. If it's a union initiative, it needs to be voted by the union. If it's a division initiative, it needs to be voted by the division. And it needs to be minuted. And why is this? Because we are control freaks? Not at all. But because there's a thing called a sending liability. And people view, when they see the logo of the church, they view deep pockets. And you may say, no, my brother, we don't do that here. We don't do this. I'm telling you, we do this. I'm telling you, we do it here in Africa. They do it everywhere in the world. Ascending liability. When we do things, we need to realize there can be consequences. But consequences aside, we do things the right way because it's the right thing to do. As I listen to descriptors of the negative, things described because they're not there, sickness not there, in our sermon, in our devotional this morning. Well, what Adventist medical missionary work is not, it's not a business. It's not a business. And this is one of the areas where we run into problems, because I understand the issues related to job creation and to income generating projects. Our health ministry and our health mission work should never degenerate into a money spinning, income generating project. Recoup your costs, but it's not a business. Adventist missionary work is not for sale. So when we go through a course, a summit, and we have a little certificate of attendance, that doesn't mean we can go and set up shop. It is not for sale. It is not for selfish gain. The devotional this morning could not have been more appropriate. It's not for selfish gain. It's not quackery. You know what quackery is? You don't know? It's these strange potions, treatments, and poisons that get peddled by those who are unscrupulous. And they say, well, you know, we've got this ointment that comes from duck droppings and some squashed up grass seeds. And you apply it to your toenails and it puts hair on your head. Quackery. If something sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. And when you hear about these things which are being sold by, God forbid, the pastor's wife, or the health ministry's director's son-in-law, be wary. It's not unscientific. If it is health ministry, if it's the genuine deal, it's not going to be unscientific. The other thing, it will not be divisive. And I have to emphasize this again and again. And it was mentioned by Dr. Harding when he spoke about nutrition and the hot buttons related to nutrition. You don't see churches divided on how many hours of exercise we should do in a week. Have you been to a church where they argue about that? It doesn't comprise and consist of diagnostic and therapeutic manipulations. So when we talk about, and when Ellen White talked about medical missionary work, when she talked about the natural remedies, she was talking about the preventive health principles which can also be used in curative processes. But she was addressing very strongly the preventive lifestyle measures which we should be practicing and teaching. So let's move to the working policy once again. This is going to be a fun day, isn't it? Policy. Elder Reinecker, you're glad you came. This is Secretariat's joy, policies. In that same policy that was voted in 2007, I'm grateful to have had a little part in seeing this conflict of interest, and this is in the health ministry's part of the working policy, is involved whenever there accrues to an individual profits from programs or activity within the church. Church members and church databases deserve protection from activities that may result in personal gain. Why have you gone so quiet? And so we need to be careful when we endorse programs. One of the most difficult parts of my job is when people say, please, won't you just endorse our program? Can we get the health ministry stamp on this? And we say no. But it's evidence-based. We say no. Why? Because it's their living. There's a policy which governs conflict of interest. We don't always look at these things. So we've looked at what the negatives are, what it's not. Let's look at what it is. Adventist medical missionary work is a ministry. It's a ministry. Yes, we talk about Christ's method, and I love that description. It's a great description. But let's never forget that that method is embodied in a ministry. And you notice that in the devotional today, there was an allusion to the minister being a what? What? A servant. A servant. It's a ministry. We serve. We don't lord it. We do the things we should be doing. It's grace-filled. It's not something that comes along with a big sledgehammer and says, you will do this, that, and the next thing. It comes along and says, we have the option of a much better way, which can lead to quality of life and a better understanding of God. It's compassionate. It's done with love. It's done with caring. It's inclusive. There are no boundaries. You don't have to have special qualifications to be served by Adventist medical missionary work. It's balanced. It's balanced. And what our members and our communities are looking for, they are looking for a balanced message, which, by the way, as I study the spirit of prophecy and science, balance is what has been propagated and preached by the writings of Ellen White all along. It meets real needs. So when people need clean water, we don't go into a long dissertation about how to make meat analogs. We secure the water supply. We meet the real needs. We call Brother Tayo and say, how can we partner? It's sustainable. It's not a one-off event. It's not a one-time come in and go out. It's something which should be sustainable. And if you remember yesterday's devotional, done in Jesus' name. Done in Jesus' name. He is the pattern man. He is the one we wish to follow. We talk about extending the healing ministry of Jesus. Adventist medical missionary work must do that. So it's done institutionally in hospitals, clinics, medical schools, nursing schools. It's done in the church and related to the community. So Adventist medical missionary work comes in many forms, and it is practiced in many ways, and it is propagated in many ways. It is personal. For me, I was interviewed by our health director on a program which says, this is my health. It's your health, my health, the pastor's health, the leader's health, the church member's health. And if we wish our church members to embrace health appropriately, as leaders, we better start practicing it. Until the leadership of our church and our churches, our pastors, our administrators, walk the talk, the church members never will. You can't sell something you don't believe in. Adventist medical missionary work includes supporting ministries that work in support of the church mission. And I would urge you not to be disparaging of supporting ministries that are committed to God's cause and function according to the outline I've given you in the working policy. I have met and have learned from some of the pioneers in the current age of the dedicated commitment people have to spreading the gospel of Jesus, regardless of pay or no pay. Churches are to be centers of hope and health. That's where we can meet. That's where we can be in the community, where people can come and they can learn about health, where they can be educated, where they can be loved, and where they can perhaps reach out and find Jesus, because he is not very far from us. They need to be centers of hope and health. There needs to be sound instruction, carefully crafted, well prepared. They need to be welcoming. They need to be welcoming. Not to worry about whether in the potluck the newly baptized member's dish has real cheese in it. They need to be welcoming. Glad you're here with us. Love to have you back again. Genuinely love to have you back again. Our churches need to be free of extremes. Extremes are dangerous. Extremes are destructive. And we need to avoid them. Our programs and initiatives need to be planned and sustained. If you do 2 programs a year, do them well and do them every year, instead of doing 12 programs a year and doing them badly. Whatever we do, we should do it in a sustained, prayerful, planned, careful way, and reach out to all. And in the venue and in the country in which we are speaking, we have learned, I hope, the lessons of reaching out to all without discrimination. To all. Every member then becomes a health educator. And you're saying to yourself, has he really lost it entirely this morning? Because the Spirit of Prophecy says, every member a medical missionary. Well, I think that when we talk about medical missionaries, sometimes we need to navigate very carefully what we mean by that, as I said at the beginning. But every member a health educator, minister being a servant. I would like that description to be included as well. When we think of Adventist medical missionary work, let's think of it as Adventist medical servant work. How we can meet needs, how we can help people, how we can assist people, how we can be there for them. My good friend Dr. Zeno Charles Marshall shared with me some slides last night late. Ellen White also thought of using other terms for medical missionary work. The medical missionary work, she wrote in letter 77 of 1900, might better be named the missionary health restoration work. Well, that doesn't flow off the tongue as quickly, but you know what? It makes a little difference in some of the misunderstandings that we have. So it's important to realize that we are not married to one term. And I think that as I look at what is happening around the world in Adventist medical missionary work, we need to look at our terminology. We also need to look carefully and kindly at the self-supporting work. Because she writes, much of the work will have to be made self-supporting. There is more to do in a short time than can be done if men wait to be sent, paid for their work. A self-supporting worker is to have your encouragement. In 2013, when I came to this office, I made a determined decision that we will respectfully work with supporting ministries. And the key word is respectful. Not disparagingly, not judgmentally, not in a looking down manner, but in a respectful way. And I expect supporting ministries to work respectfully with the church. Because respect begets respect. But respect comes from relationship. Relationship comes from communication. She also writes very clearly. And for those of us who espouse certain things which are dangerous and damaging in our health ministry, she writes, it is time that something was done to prevent, she uses the word novices, that means untrained people, from taking the field and advocating health reform. Their works and words can be spared, for they do more injury than the wisest and most intelligent men with the best influence they can exert can counteract. That's why we have to be careful of three-quarter truth health. Because that little bit of damage sometimes takes forever to erase. So what is our opportunity? Our opportunity is to be responsible. If they see that we are intelligent with regard to health, they will be more ready to believe that we are sound in Bible doctrines. That is why I put it to you, one of the major reasons, apart from it being the right thing to do, if people see that we are sound in what we do in health, they may say, well, you know what? Let's find out more of what these people say. Comprehensive health ministry and Adventist medical missionary work works across ministries. It's a commodity to every department. It should be utilized in all outreach. And here, as we close, are some warnings. We must know what we are doing. And we're going to have more conversation as the next few months go by as to ensure we understand our definitions. We need to be clear about our mission. We must rightly train our members so that they are not like ships without an anchor. So we have a responsibility. It's a significant protection against error when people understand what is truth. We must share the concepts of comprehensive health ministry with our pastors and administrators. This is an urgent need. So that when people seek access to the pulpit, our pastors are fully prepared as to know who to allow and who not. And we must embrace and fulfill our mission in comprehensive health ministry. Because if we leave a void, be sure someone or something else will fill that void. And so, let's remember our accountability. Let's be responsible. Let's take the counsel that has been given to us so richly, so freely, and the opportunity that is granted to us, and dispense a grace-filled health message to a broken world. We have been saved to serve. We've been created to enjoy and preserve wholeness for service. We have been created in the image of our loving God. Our mission is to bring glory to Him. We belong to Him, and we need to prioritize, plan, and find the time to live a life of wholeness in service despite our inherent brokenness. Gracious Father, your people have come together to learn, to pray, to seek, to be comforted, and at times to be disturbed. May your Spirit speak to our hearts. May we rightly represent you and go forth from this place to introduce the world to a risen Savior. In Jesus' name, amen.